Hey folks, thanks for tuning in JT the Ag Guy. Today we're talking about the downfall of John Deere. I should probably change my background real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay. Let's talk about the downfall of John Deere. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about the downfall of John Deere and how I believe personally that they will not be a company in the next 20 to 30 years. Now, real quick, I want to make this very clear to all my John Deere fanboys out there. I'm not saying John Deere's not going to be a company tomorrow, okay? Obviously, they're a multi-billion-dollar company today, but the path they're going down is a similar path that has happened to many other tractor manufacturers in the past, specifically IH, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So, let's get into it. And real quick, before we move on, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support on the Prop 12 video. I seriously didn't think doing videos like this would even be popular. I didn't think people would actually like stuff like this, but to see people actually like it and see the response we got on that video was just amazing. So, you guys are awesome. So thank you so much. But you're not here to hear me chit-chat about my last video. You're here to hear me talk about the downfall of John Deere. So let's get into it. Real quick, let's talk a little about the history of John Deere. 1837, John Deere creates the John Deere Moline Plow Factory, okay? Now, what you have to understand is John Deere was a blacksmith by trade prior to this, okay? Now, the story goes, according to John Deere, is that John Deere was sitting in his home one day, looking out the window, and he was friends with a bunch of farmers in the local area, okay? According to what John Deere says about the guy John Deere, is that he saw farmers struggling outside with their plows. We have to understand is John Deere lived in the Illinois area when he created the plow, or he didn't create the plow, when he created his new modified version of the plow. And what we have to understand about that is the soil there is really, really thick and really, really nutrient dense. Now, this is great for growing crops. It gives you very fertile ground. The downside of it, though, is it's very hard to till over. And back then, farming was you till the ground till it's basically all turned over, then you farm it. There was no practices of doing no-till and stuff like that. So that was the way you farmed. You had to till the ground. And farmers were running the problem where they had to stop every 20 to 30 feet, uncover the plow, and keep going. As you can imagine, this is like stopping every 20 to 30 feet with a tractor, having to wipe off either a section of your planter or a sweep on one of your cultivator, or a sweep on your cultivator, or something like that. It just wasn't efficient. So according to John Deere, he finds this old stainless steel saw blade. He bends it into more of the square shape versus the original shape that you usually see associated with plows. And he creates the first, modern type plow that can plow this kind of soil. Real quick, I want to bring this up, though. I have seen a little bit of writing. This is John Deere actually took the design of the plow from a different blacksmith that lived up near Chicago that he supposedly interned with when he was really young. I don't know if the story is true. I don't know if it has any, again, I don't know if it's true. I haven't seen enough historical evidence to say it is 100% true. But if you guys want me to do a video about that in the future, please let me know. But anyways, John Deere creates his plow. You don't really need to know the history. He moves his operation to Moline, Illinois, which is where the Rusty Palace or Deere headquarters, the pavilion, and Harvester Works is at today. But that used to just be the plow works. And there it said that John Deere had his house built on a hill so he could look down into the valley and see where see if they were making plows. What I mean by that is he could see the smoke coming out of the factory. And if smoke was coming out of the factory, it means plows weren't being made. But anyways, John Deere dies between then and when we start getting more modern John Deere. So John Deere, as we said, started by making plows. They then move on to making tractors. So you have to understand this other part. Where I live, the Waterloo area here in Iowa, It was actually home of one of the first tractors. Now, there's a little bit of debate who created the first tractor. Some people say it was Caterpillar. Some people say it was Frolic with his tractor, which is the guy we're talking about. Some people say there was guys out east that created it. It's really a huge debate. All these guys kind of created their version of the tractor around the same time, so it's kind of hard to say. But we're just going to go with our guy, Frolic, that he made it. Now, Frolic made the gasoline tractor because he was a farmer in northern Iowa and southeast Dakota. Now, both these areas have that really dark soil we're talking about, so he used large steam traction engines to plow his dirt. The problem was his farms were very, 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 very far apart, so he had to basically take these traction engines apart every time he wanted to transport them. He had to transport them by rail, which is expensive. Now, you might be saying, JT, why didn't you just drive them there? Traction engines are slow. Okay, they can hardly go 3 miles an hour. I've actually done a video on traction engines before. We've operated them here on this YouTube channel. But it's not important. He creates a gasoline engine, or he doesn't create a gasoline engine, but he creates the gasoline-powered tractor, which is awesome. Frolic is a great inventor. He's a horrible businessman, though. He creates the Waterloo gas engine factory. Unfortunately, though, it kind of just goes up in flames. It doesn't do well. He's not a good businessman. He gets ousted by his own cabinet. Yeah, the guy who founded this factory was ousted from being president, essentially. But in 1918, John Deere buys that factory for $1.8 million. And you can actually still see that check at the Gas and Engine Works Museum in Waterloo today. That's not important to the story. So John Deere buys this new plant. And this is another kind of part where people debate what's the first tractor. A lot of people associate the Waterloo Boy, which is this tractor, to be John Deere's first tractor. Now, there's two debates that it isn't. First and foremost, this is what the Waterloo Gas Engine Works was actually producing at the time. So John Deere just kept making them until they actually came out with the Model D, which was their first real tractor. There's also debate. There's a tractor called the Dan, or the Dean. It's a 3-wheel tractor. Here's a picture of it. Supposedly there was like 100 of them made, but no one knows what really happened with them. Supposedly some records say they were made before the Waterloo Boy, so it's really a debate on what was the first tractor. But if we want to go by what was the first tractor to bear the John Deere name, it would have been the Model D. The Model D was created to be a rough, tough little tractor. It's actually one of John Deere's longest running tractors. I need to keep moving this on because it started turning into John Deere history video and not so much why is John Deere failing today video. So anyways, John Deere creates the Model D. They're doing pretty good. 1918, World War I has just ended before. You get the Roaring 20s. Hey, this is great. John Deere's like, this is awesome. We're making money. Agriculture's improving. More families are starting to move to cities. So farmers are starting to have to produce for more people than just themselves. This is awesome. Until the 1930s come around. That's right, the Great Depression. Now here's the thing. Farmers have faced every year farmers face financial crisis every year. But the 1930s, the 1980 farm crisis, and 2008 financial crisis are probably the top three that we're probably going to talk in this video, okay? For obvious reasons, 1930s is horrible. You got the Dust Bowl, you got the economy's doing terrible. And what happens, there used to be actually a lot of tractor companies, but what happened in the 1930s is farmers would buy these tractors on credit, and they would start farming with these tractors, but they wouldn't be able to make their payments because their plants died because of the Dust Bowl, or they just weren't making the money like they used to. So tractor companies would come back, repo the tractors, and that's why a lot of tractor companies actually failed. John Deere took a different approach at the time. They actually said, hey, you know what? You bought the tractor. We can see it's kind of hard times right now. Keep the tractor and pay us back when you can. This started John Deere's, what John Deere was known for, working with the farmers, not working against the farmers. And this would popularize them. Now you have to keep in mind John Deere's not the famous tractor company at the time, as many people associate it as it is today. It's the bottom dog. It's the bottom feeder. Your top ones are going to be Farmall. And those guys, those are your top dogs. John Deere continues to make these two-cylinder tractors, and they make the A, the H, the B, the G, basically all the letters, the M, all these little tractors. They keep making two cylinders. Then the 1960s come around, and of course here comes everybody's favorite tractor, who's a John Deere fanboy, the 4020. Look at it in all of its glory. We're going to ignore that. Editor, can we cut that out? Never mind. So, why is the 4020 so revolutionary? Well, John Deere was doing 2-cylinders for the longest time. They didn't really change the tractors that much. They did change the height of them, the stature of them, the way they looked. They changed some of the horsepower, the gear ratios, stuff like that. But they never had done a tractor like this. Most tractor companies at the time were actually doing 4 to 6-cylinder engines, mostly 4-cylinder. And they were in a line. John Deere was just doing the horizontal, horizontal cylinders. So this is already a big change for John Deere. They're starting to enter this multi-piston era. But the other thing that was really big about the 20 series and 10 series was transmission. So what you have to understand with a tractor is that you basically throw down your clutch, you shift into gear, you got to pop it in just right, and then, then you're in gear and you can go. The 4020 was a very special type transmission. It's what created the modern day transmission, essentially, to where you don't have to keep your foot in the clutch all the time. You can shift in between gears going down the road. Now, of course, you can, this was huge, this was big. Now, many people associate the 4020 to the death of IH, and it's not really true. We're actually going to talk about the death of IH because it's very similar what happened to IH, what's happening to John Deere right now. But anyways, 1960s come around, they introduced the 4020, the 4010, all these types of tractors. They go on through the 70s, which was when the greatest combine series was ever made, the 100 series. You can't prove me, or you can't change my opinion on that. It just is the greatest combine series ever. I say this because I have a 4400 and a 6600. But moving on, John Deere keeps revolutionizing. They start becoming a bigger and bigger brand, and this is where you start seeing IH versus John Deere. John Deere starts to climb the ranks into where they're almost with IH. Then, of course, the 1980s come around. IH gets bought out. John Deere is officially the new big dog on the block. Now, John Deere keeps this title for a very long time. They create the 8000 series, which is, in my opinion, the best tractor ever built. I mean, they're super awesome. I love the 8000 series, okay? You got your sound guards in there between the 70s and 80s, all that stuff. They keep revolutionizing. They actually created the first autonomous tractor in 2000 to 2001, but of course that didn't really take off until way down the road. I mean, here's their original autonomous tractor. Here's their new autonomous tractor. So John Deere has always kind of been a leader when it comes to innovation. They've always kind of been the forefront of understanding that you have to have innovation to be competitive. I mean, that's the big thing in the ag industry. You have to understand, over the last couple of years, we've lost hundreds and thousands of family farms. So that means each farm has to become more and more and more efficient to keep feeding this population that we have that's growing. And John Deere understood that call. They've introduced, guidance systems into their machines. They used monitoring systems, all these things for farmers to track their stuff and easily be able to make changes with their crops. It's super awesome what they did. You got your Rainstar system and all that. Then the 2010s come around. They kind of just stick with the same thing. Case IH, they kind of stick around the same thing. Nothing really changes. And then we get to 2019 when the problems start. So 2019 is when new CEO John May was elected in office, if you want to say that. Now, you might be saying, JT, that guy looks like a pretty nice guy. He looks like your average friendly grandpa. What could be possibly wrong with this guy? Well, John May has completely changed the direction John Deere wants to run, okay? Now, what you have to understand is John Deere has been huge on innovation. That's their thing. They know if we don't innovate, the competition gets in front of us. And if they get in front of us, then we're losing. So, they understand that. And it's also important to note John Deere's over 100 years old in tractor business. They celebrated that in 2018 before John May was brought into his CEO office. So, yeah. So what exactly was John May trying to do? He wants to raise profit margins. He wants to make John Deere as profitable as possible. Now, where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah. History time with IH. So what happened to IH? So as I said, it was the big dog of the time. I mean, IH was the tractor company. It was the innovator. It created all these new cool ideas for farming. It was, like I said, it was a big dog. So what happened? Well, in 1977, this guy called Archie, let me check my notes right here. Archie McCain, I think is how you say his name. I might be misspelling that or missaying that. But he was the CEO of International Harvester from 1977 to 1982. Now, he came with one mission, and one mission only. And it's just like our good friend John made, to improve profit margins. And of course, this started out okay. You know, IH was already a very successful tractor company. They had had a couple rough years, but it was like, well, hey, you know what? We're going to be okay if we just keep trying to improve. But that's not what Archie did. He first tried to, so we have to understand is IH poured a lot of money into their R&D, especially for like their axial flow series combines. And that was kind of the mentality, is we're going to pour money into R&D to create new ideas for agriculture and farming and all these things. And you have to keep in mind, IH also made refrigerators, trucks, and like literally you could have a whole entire IH home with IH equipment. It was nuts. But anyways, getting back, Archie basically cut everything. He started cutting workers. He started cutting money for R&D and all these things. Now, why do I bring up R&D? Well, like I said earlier, R&D is so important. The ag industry is continuously changing. If you don't come out with new ideas and innovations, you fall behind and you die. And that's exactly what happened to IH. They started to lose more and more money for R&D. The new CEO didn't manage money very well, and he pocketed nearly $1.8 million is what it was found out later, is how much he pocketed, which 70s, 80s, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money today, but that's a lot of money back then. That was his bonus. That wasn't anything he got from just being the CEO. So why am I making this connection? Well, this is very similar to what John Deere is doing with their, with them actually. John Main has completely cut R&D. He fired hundreds of workers from PEC, which is the Product Engineering Center. Fun fact, that's actually where the 4020 was tested. Which actually, my dad was one of those guys who got cut. Now, I'm not making this video out of spite. I'm making out this video to share information about this. To show you guys that John Deere is changing and the path we're going down isn't good. So John Deere's already started to cut things for funding. They're already starting to fire workers who are on your lines and stuff. And here's the thing. You kind of need to know what you're going to build, and you kind of need people to build those machines for you to be able to be productive and efficient. And, you know, John Deere keeps citing that they're having a rough year, but let's look back at John Deere's history. They were a young company when the 1930s came around the Dust Bowl. They survived that by supporting farmers, okay? 1980s farm crisis, they're one of very few tractor companies to actually survive that without getting bought out. I mean, the only reason they survived that is because, again, they supported the farmers by supporting local dealers. So that's really the only reason they survived in the 1980s. 2008 financial crisis, they didn't cut as many people as other companies did. You know, John Deere has faced many hardships, but the 2020s, it's not been a hardship. It's not been as hard of a hardship as they made it out to be. It's not really even been that bad a year. Sure, last couple of years, corn prices, soybean prices haven't been great, but they've not been near as bad as what John Deere has faced before. So why is John Deere making these decisions? It's because they're going from a company that wants to focus on the farmer to a company that's focusing on their investors. We want to make our investors happy, because if they're happy, we're happy. And we can see this with their social media. They created this new position called the CTO, the Chief Tractor Officer, and they gave it to some college graduate, and they gave him $200,000. Most of their engineers don't get paid $200,000. Most of the people who build the tractors don't get paid anywhere near $200,000, let alone $100,000. It's seriously nuts. It's crazy. You're paying this kid who has no farming experience to represent your company. It doesn't make any sense. And I know the whole entire thing they're going with is, well, he's learning. But again, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go into a rant about this. It's a chief tractor officer. They're supposed to know stuff about tractors. They're not supposed to be, oh, I'm learning about this new and wonderful world of farming. They're supposed to teach and educate people, which is, you know, what we're doing on this channel. But it doesn't make any sense. You can clearly tell John Deere is trying to just make their profit margins larger and larger. And you can see it by this research right here. Seriously, they've had one of their best years on record. And it's not because, you know, oh, we've had a hard year, but we've been very good at managing. No, it's because they fired a ton of people and are just pocketing the money. It's insane. And you might be saying, well, JT, John Deere's came out with some awesome innovation this last year. I mean, you might be saying, JT, but John Deere is one of the best companies. They've had a lot of innovation this past year. The 830, the large X9 tractors, which, fun fact, my dad actually worked on that before he got laid off well, really fired. It was really they've really been firing people, not laying off people. But they came out that 830 doesn't have to have depth. They came out with the new electric tractor, which personally I'm not a fan of, but you could say, hey, that's innovation right there. And, you know, they're coming up with all this new technology. I mean, obviously they're innovative. That's the thing, though. This technology has come from the engineers and the people who built these tractors before they fired them, before they got rid of them. So now John Deere is short on people, and they got a CEO and a board that just is more money hungry. And I'm not saying John Deere's never been money hungry before. There's obviously been people at the top who are CEOs who want the money. But there's never been this level of mismanagement before. That's what I'm saying. It's very, very, very similar to what happened to IH. And I will not be surprised if John Deere's not a company in the next 20 years. It's very possible that they're just going to sell it all off. I mean, the writing is on the wall. Obviously, John Deere is trying to just get their people who are at the top more money. And like I said, you can see it in the numbers, and they're going to start running out of ideas. They're going to start falling behind. I mean, look at Kubota, look at Case IH. They're starting to come out with some really good innovation across the ag industry, and John Deere is going to start falling behind. The other thing, too, I want to bring up, which is probably something you guys have heard about John Deere being in the news, is right to repair. The one thing that helped John Deere survive the 1980s farm crisis, like I mentioned, was keeping their dealers there, but also making machinery super easy to work on so a farmer doesn't have to pay thousands of dollars to get it fixed. If they want to fix it themselves, they can. With all this new software, it's, well, you have to bring it in when we have our computer open, and you have to pay us to fix it. Now, recently, John Deere's been being sued over this, but it's very plain to see that they don't care about the farmer. I saw a statistic the other day that this has nearly cost farmers $4.2 billion. That's a lot of money. It's just insane to think about. Obviously, John Mayne doesn't care about this company. He doesn't care about the heritage or any of the hardships this company's went through. Like I've said before, John Deere faced literally the 1930s financial crisis and the Dust Bowl within really 20 years of being in the tractor section, which was a huge risk. $1.8 million to buy that factory. That's a lot of money today, and that was a lot of money back then. That was a ton of money back then. And the thing is they survived that. They survived the 1980s farm crisis. They survived the 2008 financial crisis. And yet, the thing that's going to kill them is going to be a greedy CEO. And if you don't believe me, again, look at what happened to IH. A greedy CEO came in. He started cutting everything to just increase profits. That was his thing. It's profits, profits, profits. And that's what we want. John Deere, if they don't see money being made from it, they're not going to invest in it. It's like we were talking with R&D. They don't see the direct line of flow coming from R&D. And research and development is what R&D stands for. And so they're cutting a ton of guys from it. And like I said, we're going to have a huge population by 2050. And to be able to feed that population, we need equipment to be smarter, easier to work with, and more efficient than ever. And other companies are answering that call, but John Deere very much is not. So, how can John Deere fix this problem? Very simple. Fire John May. Get rid of the guy. And get somebody in there that actually cares about this. Unlike IH, they hired a new CEO after the writing was very plain on the wall, and he tried to create a bunch of stuff to help turn IH around, but it was too little too late. If John Deere fired John May now and got rid of him, it wouldn't surprise me if they were able to turn this around. The other thing to keep in mind is they're moving production to Mexico. Now, obviously, with Mr. President Trump getting into office, that's not going to fly anymore. But a story I heard from a friend of mine who knows a guy who works at Taco, which is Tractor Cab Assembly. Well, it used to be Taco, but they don't assemble cabs there anymore. They started getting their tractor cabs made in Mexico. And the problem is they were shipping them all the way up to the U.S., which tractor cabs have a lot of glass on them. And by the time they got to the U.S., a small team of guys had to fix almost every single cab because stuff was broken, wires were crimped, the quality of work just wasn't near as good coming out from down there. So John Deere obviously is trying to cut costs, or trying to move industries overseas to attempt to, again, bring their profit margins lower. and they're not seeing it. Farming and being in the ag industry isn't about getting good profit margins. Yes, you have to be a good businessman. I'm not saying you got to run a charity, but you have to be able to focus on innovation and creating new products for your customers to be able to use, but also still supporting those old products that they bought from you. And I know I'm going to have a couple people in the comments say, well, John Deere supports FFA and they support 4-H and all this stuff. And that's great, they do, but it doesn't give them an excuse to do what they're doing now. They're, again, undermining their customers. They obviously don't care about their employees. It's very, very plain. And I've talked to a lot of different, again, my dad worked for John Deere. He told me within weeks of John Main getting in, there was a completely different feel working for John Deere. It wasn't so much we're creating the next generation of innovation. It was more, we're going to do this as cheap and as crappy as possible. And again, we can see this with the products. 8,000 series, it's becoming more and more common for the block to start to blow up and stuff like that. My point is that you don't have to be a John Deere hater. I'm not saying you got to go out and say, down with John Deere, they're terrible. I'm simply trying to be a whistleblower here. I'm simply trying to say, hey guys, look what happened to International Harvester. Look what happened to these other tractor companies. When a greedy CEO gets into them, it's over for them. They're gone within 20 years. It's pretty simple. I don't know how else to really round out this video, but I think it's very sad that this company started with a great man who believed in innovation, who created something to help a farmer, and it's more than likely going to end with a greedy person who just believes in getting the best and most profit for himself. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope what I said makes sense. Don't forget, I'll have a poll out for what my next video is going to be about. God bless you. Take care. And don't forget, if it's red, it doesn't get left in the shed.